So I'm going to start now. Good afternoon, everyone. So I am very interested in history and among very other things, but maybe it's related in some way to the fact that I have always been surrounded by experts in this discipline. My dad, for one, was a historian, and since I can remember, I have had to endure dense, long spiels, mainly on the fall of the Iron Curtain, or on fascism or colonialism. It was very interesting, but I think these speeches are in some way at the origin of my migrants, the migrants that I have today. So, fortunately, my best friend is also a historian. He is a PhD student in the University of Valencia, and thank God he's also a poet, and he's an excellent narrator. He's really into telling people curious historical facts and amusing stories. And I have to confess that, as many of us, during lockdown, I've been feeling kind of blue. And the anecdotes and the stories that he's been telling me have really helped me to distract. So today I would like to share some of these stories or anecdotes with you. Let's talk about the early history of biological warfare. Because when talking about that, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? In my case, it's maybe the image of the napalm girl running naked and crying while her skin slowly burns. Or sometimes I also think of the anthrax attacks of 2001. I don't know if you know about this, but in the US in 2001, some people received contaminated envelopes and letters with a microbe, and when they opened them, they died instantly. It was terrible. But of course, these are contemporary events. But biological warfare strategies have been around for a while. And when I say a while, I mean centuries and centuries. Laboratories as we know them today are a pretty recent invention. So, how did it do it? Let me tell you about it. If you want to know, let's hop together into the time machine. First, let's take a look to ancient civilizations. Biological warfare methods in antiquity, as you will guess, were quite rudimentary. The earliest documented incident of the intention to use biological weapons is recorded in a text of 1500, 1200 BC, more or less, in which victims of a disease called tularemia were driven into the enemy lands to cause an epidemic on the enemy. But of course, there were other strategies. Archers tipped their arrow tips with snake venom, human blood, and animal feces to cause the wounds of their victims to be infected. Another technique, very smart technique, was to throw toxic plants into water supply. And this is my favorite one, by far, in naval battles on the sea, soldiers would use a rather curious strategy. They used to throw clay pots brimming with venomous snakes or scorpions, and they would throw them onto the decks of the enemy ships. Just imagine. Now let's fast forward to the Middle Ages. What a great moment in human history. And if you cannot tell, I'm being sarcastic. On top of the strategies that I previously mentioned, people in the Middle Ages started weaponizing diseases, specifically the plague. So victims of the bubonic plague were used for biological attacks, often by fleeing fomites, such as infected corpses, infected excrements, or infected clothing over castle walls using catapults. Just throw everything. This was very usual. And animal carcasses were also used with this purpose when in lack of human corpses. You always need a plan B in life. Let's keep traveling to the future, shall we? Now we are in the 17th and 18th century. As you know, it is the rise of European colonialism. The plague is long gone, so Europeans are not going to go around the world throwing corpses at people, thankfully. But they have their ways. I do not know if you have seen the movie The War of Worlds, a science fiction film directed by Steven Spielberg. That is the 2005 version. I think the original one was filmed in 1953. It is based on a very famous novel, with the same name by H.G. Wells. In short, in this film, some aliens try to invade the Earth and subdue the human race. Classic plot. At the end, everything seems lost, and the main characters are about to be killed by this gigantic alien, when suddenly Tom Cruise, the lead actor, saves the day by coughing in the face of one of the aliens. And boom, that's it. They're all dead. It suddenly becomes apparent that this alien race is not capable of handling the microbes of diseases their bodies are not used to. And that's exactly how biological warfare worked during colonialism. There are several examples of how this worked, but I'm just going to give you one for the sake of briefness. In North America, when the Europeans arrived to the New World, the British gave a little gift to a Native American tribe: 2 blankets and 1 handkerchief. And they were inside of metal boxes that had been exposed to smallpox. It turns out that smallpox was highly contagious among the Native Americans, as their bodies were not used to it. And together with measles, influenza, chickenpox, and other old world diseases, was a major cause of death since the arrival of Europeans and their animals, and it was a major cause of their extinction, sadly. So, as a conclusion, I've always conceived history as a great tool to analyze humanity, know what we've done wrong in the past, and learn to take better decisions in the future. However, I'm finding that history, it's also a great way to have a laugh for me in these dark days. And I think it's quite ironically, because right now we're kind of living a biological war that's making history, while I am trying to get away of everything, learning about biological war for myself. Thank you very much.